And yes, folks, it is now time for us to get into our focal point, where we do a deep dive into the topics that matter to you, our listeners, the fan themselves, geek and pop culture topics that require just a little bit more, just a little bit more. We got to touch on it. And what are we talking about this week?
Yeah, this one's going to cause some controversy.
Don't they all?
Listen. All right. So the focal point this week is it possible or even an agreeable approach to entertainment to separate art from the artist? Can you separate the art from the artist? Is it possible? Does it even make any sense? Now, before we get deeply into all the different layers of this, let's just give you some examples of what we mean, right? For example, Kanye. He's a big one, and we'll keep going to these people. I just want to give a list of folks.
So we're not going to discuss them individually right now.
No, we can. Okay. I just wanted to start naming them so y'all get where I'm going.
Okay.
J.K. Rowling, Joe Bennett of the Hulk. Okay, yeah, you got to explain that one. Warren Ellis and Evangeline Lilly. Each one of these people have done or said, or a combination of both, things that are questionable. Potentially questionable to the greater good of a group of people, of a culture, or of common sense. So, and I mentioned some of these people because a lot of these people touch geek and pop culture in many different ways, or they're on the outskirts thereof, or there's intersections there. So those are just some examples. Yes, Benhameen, we could definitely talk about specifics about individuals, but I just wanted to kind of float those names first.
And this really touches on, I think, cancel culture, or the idea of cancel culture, right? Because that's what we can get into right here. Because a lot of people think that when, we're attacking, or not even attacking, when we're just even pointing out anything about the people, that we're calling for them to be canceled, or that they could even be canceled, that there's such a thing as canceling. Because all these people, even some people you didn't mention who I wanted to mention, such as Vince Vaughn, Bruce Willis, who I've lately been like, wow, y'all are some weird dudes. They're not going anywhere. They're still multimillionaires. They're still getting work to this day. I mean, Mel Gibson, who Vince supported, is getting work to this day. These people don't go away. Nothing happens to the 99% of Hollywood that ever gets accused of anything. Except for your boy. He vanished. Man who was eating people.
Oh, not my boy.
Yeah, I know. He played the twin in Social Network. I can't remember his name.
Oh, I don't see that. I don't know.
Yeah, that man dipped out of Hollywood because he was.
Thank goodness,
people.
I don't know. But there's different people, whether they be considered luminaries or otherwise. There's different creators who have reached high levels of success where they maybe they have views or life views or whatever it is that it requires you to distance yourself from them in some way. And again, the question just comes back, is it possible to separate the art from the artist? Is that concept even feasible, right? The reason why is it's two things going on to me. The first is that you genuinely enjoy that creative output from that person. That creative output could have, for example, got you through one of the worst times of your life. Or that creative output is just truly something that you enjoy. It vibes with you. It speaks to you. It's in your ministry, all that other stuff. And so, and also that art may have grown above and beyond that person. I will give an example. Let's use J.K. Rowling, for example. Harry Potter as a ministry is well and beyond J.K. Rowling for many years at this point, in my view. Literally, if you and again that this is the concept of separating the art from the artist. Some new generations, if you start talking about Harry Potter and all this other stuff, they may not even ask about who created this and all this other stuff. They may not even care. They just like the stories and the characters and the world that has taken on form on its own.
Yes.
And I wanted to use J.K. and Harry Potter particularly because again that's literally culture shifting. That's literally that's millennial generation right there. It has changed the way people thought, the way pop culture was spoken about. It had a lot of implications above and beyond the creator herself. So with the things that JK have said, that obviously has caused a lot of strife. That's obviously caused a lot of controversy, to say the least. And it at this point, like, I noticed that it really, I think this, for me, it was the first time it really became very clear that people were really able to separate the art from the artist because they felt like it was absolutely necessary. I think it's New York Times or something like that, where there's a article that was like, what's Harry Potter like without J.K. Rowling? Meaning, what is this entity, this creative entity, it's like without its creator? And what does that mean? What does that mean for the culture of Harry Potter? What does that mean for the people and the fans and everything that goes behind it? The stories that have been birthed from it. And even now in Hollywood, the Dumbledore movies coming out. Like, is there true separation of from the creator at this point?
No. I mean, that I say no, because one, all right, first of all, I'll say this. I read Harry Potter when I was locked up. Like, that shit's serious, like, that shit's worldwide. Everybody reads Harry Potter. It was a massive, massive success. And all the time that we give to it now, or money that we give to it, a portion of it's still going in JK's pockets. A big portion. So it's like, do you separate that? And then here's the question I ask, like, because we're about to bring this person up on our list, is Mr. Ye, Mr. West.
Mr. West.
That's
now the hardest one.
For me, that's definitely the hardest one. And it's like, why is it that I see more of this when it is a black artist? I feel like black people cancel black people quicker than we cancel white people. That might be, now you want to talk about controversial, that might be it.
Well, explain your reasoning.
I'd actually have to think about that, but
Okay, so are you rescinding that comment for now? Or
I'm rescinding.
You want
I feel like Kanye gets more heat, but I also feel like Kanye gets more heat from white people. That's the other thing. White people will cancel a black person far quicker than they'll cancel a white person. I mean, that goes without saying. Dave Chappelle's another one, right? Dave Chappelle gets canceled by white people immediately, while white comedians, they take their time. They did get their ass up out of what's his name though.
I was gonna say
they did get Louis C.K. up out of here.
Well, here's the thing with the last 15 years.
But there's so many.
But listen, with the last 15 years or 10 plus years, let's say that 10 plus years, with the advent of social media,
yes,
you've now had this vehicle where you can get people out the paint.
Yes.
Where you can publicly amass support to be like, that nigga's fucked up with what he or they said or did. We need to get him out the paint. And that's where this concept of cancel culture comes from. My thing is, to me, and the reason why earlier I had said there's no such thing as cancel culture, it's called accountability.
Yes.
And people have always been making people come, have or asking people to have accountability for their actions, their words, and how they affect others around them. People have always asked for that. That's not new. What's different is the platforms and the vehicles through which these voices could be heard, and the fact that you are able to amplify it to untold levels than in the past. Not to say that, like I said, obviously in the past, there's people who are speaking up about bullshit that's happening. It wasn't on a scale of, I can say it on Twitter and it gets picked up, retweeted, shared by every media outlet in the world, by 200K likes on it. Like, you understand? Like, it's the only thing has changed is the platform for the voice, the platform for the way the communication is able to spread. It's able to spread immediately. I can tweet something right now. I can say some wild shit right now. Fucking the sky is pink in Georgia. And right away it's going to get interactions. Right away it's going to get engagement from someone in the world. Someone on this planet will see this. And someone could run with it and it just swells up, or it may sit there and go nowhere. But the point is the fact that potentiality is there for anything that's said or done. So when these people say or do things that are questionable, or again, to the contrary of what really the best part of society should be, of course people are going to speak up. They have the means to. That doesn't mean that, it's cancel culture. And I know we use it just as a euphemism, like saying, homeboy got canceled. Like, we're just saying at this point, I think like when it's you and I, Ben, and lots of people are in our space, when we say cancel, we just mean the action that happened. We just mean mad people went hard at them, roasted them, whatever the case is.
Yes.
We don't literally mean, oh, their life is canceled, because we, as you just said earlier, it's not true.
No. Like Dave Chappelle is a prime example of that. Like, and this goes into the second question that I want to get into too. Like, at what point do we draw the line, right? Is it a moving goalpost? Does it depend on morals? And I think for me, another famous comedian said it best for me, right? I mean, not best, but one thing Chris Rock back in the day when Michael Jackson was going through it, right? Chris Rock, said this, and this is shit. It's hard. This was Rock. I want to say it was Rock. It wasn't Chappelle. No, it was Rock. And he's like, we gave you one kid, and then the other thing he said, like, that's rough, right? But he's like, talent supersedes morals. And I said this for the longest, right? Because someone taking another one into account, R. Kelly, right? For the longest, I said this. I know, but listen, right? Because I'm a DJ and I know music and I watch this happen in real time, right? The man put out an album where he was calling himself the Pied Piper, and this is during his biggest accusations. The video is out. And he puts out an album and multiple videos calling himself the Pied Piper dancer, and we all know the story of the Pied Piper, right? Mm-hmm. And them shits were bangers and hits in the club. I couldn't go a night without women asking me to hear every single one of those tunes. To this day, I still get requests for Kelly sometimes.
That's gross that it's to this day. So.
To this day, I played it at weddings recently. Me too. But somebody asked for, I didn't end up playing it. Somebody asked for Step in the Name of Love. And I ended up not playing that. Wow, that worked out. Good thing. Yeah. Good things, that's what I mean. But somebody did ask for it up to this day.
In 2022?
In 2022, as of last week. So that's what I mean. Talent to people, oversees morality a lot of time. Like, people are like, whatever, supersedes. Like, they don't care as long as you're putting out hits. That was the end of Kells. The hits stop coming, fuck out of here. It don't matter. Like, now we can get rid of you. It hurts, but that's
you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah. And now back to the other person we were talking about, like Dave, do we draw the line? Like, I want to say another thing about it is I feel like it doesn't matter until it affects you, because people are always thinking about themselves in this world. That's another thing, like, we're all just worried about ourselves. And, you got a lot of things going on. Life is tough. So until it really affects you, like Dave Chappelle, when he's like, right now, a lot of people are on him because of his comments about trans culture, right? And while I still consider Dave to be a genius level comedian, one of the greatest of our time, I also feel like he's just wasting a lot of time and just being pointless with his shit at this point, And I understand how it affects people, but it doesn't really, because I'm not trans. It's like, and I know trans people, etc. It's like, it's not where it's in my immediate circle. And to a lot of people, that's the same way. So until it hits them personally, they don't give a shit.
Yeah. And I wanted to just add on to that. Chica, our social media manager, she had a similar comment. She said, I think sometimes people say separate art from the artist, but it's only for people they like.
Yep.
And it's people they like, and what you're saying is only things that affect them, where now all of a sudden people care.
Dog, my next door neighbor in BK plays R. Kelly every summer, all summer.
Are you serious?
Blast it. I'm dead ass serious. Brooklyn, New York, 2022. I'm waiting for, it gets warm out so I can hear R. Kelly next door, because that's how it goes down. And I have other friends, etc. You can go down the line. And then, like we said, Kanye West, right? Kanye West, like, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is one of the few hip hop albums of like the later, that is like, to me, in the top greatest albums of all time. It's like,
and from that era, yeah.
Yeah, it's just insane how much I love that album. And, Graduation, all those are great. What do you call it? College Dropout, great. But like, My Beautiful Dark, it's like a perfect album. So how can I, because he put on a red hat, now I gotta be like, F him? But that directly affects me, and it was disgusting.
That does. And that's why I feel like we have a long list of names, but that's why I felt he was, for a lot of Black people, but particularly me, that's why I thought he was the hardest to negotiate mentally. Because, as you say, that shit directly affects me. That, what he did, It literally, and again, this is now decades removed. You went from George Bush doesn't care about black people to you're a red hat.
I mean,
and then his whole spouting of of groupthink and this and that. And you're a sheep. I'm like, my nigga, you're to me, you're wearing a KKK hood. That's the way I fucking see it.
Pretty much.
And it's just like when you see, like, I was not fucking with Kanye like for a good subset of years because he was just to me just wilding. Like, this goes against everything. And again, I'm not within his family. I haven't grown up with him when his mom was around. I can't see his mom seeing that shit was okay. This is just inference at this point, right? But like, yes. How do you rationalize that type of behavior? Well, and then on the same hand, the man is a musical genius.
Yeah, and then the other side of it is like, because I understand the way when people be like, "Oh, you just siding with the Democrats," and I'm like, I get it.
I'm not siding with nobody. I'm not wearing a fucking red cap. I'm not wearing a blue cap. Shit.
Yeah, I'm not wearing either of them. but I mean, we just said Crips and Bloods. Like,
and that's what I'm saying. Like, all that at the very least. Like, don't tell me, well, I'm a Democrat. No. I'm not even putting that. Why would you even, at the least, that's the least you can do. Not put on that shit. Not put on that shit that is clearly a symbol of hate. And if for you to try to rationalize it any other way, that's what it doesn't make sense.
I mean, he hugged 44. You know what I mean? Like, he gave that man a hug. You know, the same man, shout out to my peoples who accused the Central Park 5 of what he accused them of and had them men locked up, for the better part of their youth.
I mean, the man represents everything meaning Ye, has historically talked about that was fucked up in life.
Yeah.
Like, the guy represents everything you've ever said that was just fucked up. But what changed?
A lot. I mean, we know that. Yeah. A lot.
A lot has changed. But the whole
the M's in the bank account, a lot.
How many M's you got? A lot.
A lot. That changes. That changes him, obviously. It changes a lot of people.
And again, like I said, that goes back to, okay, so that's happening. That's the guy you remember. I mean, this was only like a year or two ago that this man was doing this shit. 2 years ago that this man was doing this shit. And then he does Donda and all this other stuff. And at least outwardly, I'm not saying everybody, at least outwardly, it feels like, oh, he's okay again.
But there's different generations too. That's the other thing, because I've had to accept that about Donda. Because I listen to Donda, I think it's a terrible album.
You do? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You like it and shit?
I didn't say it was a terrible album. That's
maybe
all.
Maybe I need to hear it again.
I didn't say it was a terrible album.
The first one, when it came out, I was like,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. I didn't say that. I think, like I said, what the implications here is the fact that how, like, for example, for me, the struggle that I'm going through, how do I say, oh, I fuck with this music, I fuck with this record, this sounds good to me. I'm so, even if I don't give the man a dime directly, I'm still supporting him by streaming, right? But yes. I also was very vehemently not fucking with him just a little bit ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, you got to give people, including myself, it's okay to change your mind about things as time goes on, but it's also like, is that hypocritical?
I mean, I played him in the club recently. It was like, remember when Kanye made good music, and that was it, and left it alone at that. But that shit's still banging in the club. I was in the joint the other night, and somebody played Ultraviolet, and it went off like it always does.
And I think it goes a little bit back to what, similarly, not exactly, but similarly to what you were saying earlier about the differences between how Black artists and white artists are received, and the fact that I noticed just in the community, we want to give people like him more grace.
Yes.
Because there's all the outside forces are not allowing for grace, are not allowing for growth. And that's why we're just like, yeah, that was fucked up what you did 2 years ago, but it seems like you're trying to redeem yourself. And that's the thing. It's like, when you give someone the grace and like, okay, maybe you are redeeming yourself, but then they slap you in the face again, then what?
Well,
they keep repeatedly slapping you in the face.
I mean, he's already repeatedly slapped us in the face. So
who's the dummy? And that's why I'm just like,
but
it's so difficult to deal with.
Like,
the music, and I'm not saying, I'm not even gonna fucking front. The like, not gonna hold you. That shit goes.
Like I say, them first few albums is all time classics. I mean, I even love 808's classic. I mean, even Yeezus pretty classic to me. If he shut up on that on Life of Pablo, I think it was a classic.
I didn't like Life of Pablo at all.
No, anyway, no, the beats is fire though. You just need to shut up.
This is all related. This also goes back to relation to this question you posed about where do we draw the line. Like, and that line is different for everybody. Sometimes it depends on morals. Sometimes it's just common sense, right? Sometimes it's just because it goes against your life views, whether socially, politically, whatever. Sometimes from a morality standpoint, that shit is a no-go. R. Kelly, complete no-go. There's nothing. And also, it also helps that I'm of a different generation, right? I'm younger than that generation where they was fucking bumping R. Kelly all the time.
I hated him all the time.
So my thing is, even though I heard those songs and even listened to and enjoyed them at the time, I was still a kid.
Hated them.
And then so when all this stuff comes out and I become aware of it, it's like I'm able to pull that plug, like, fuck that shit. Like, I'm not dealing with it.
Well before I knew, I just hated R. Kelly's music.
And that's fine. But I'm just saying, like, it just goes to the attribution you're trying to make about when does it kick in? Where's the line? Is it morals? Is it your personal understanding of the world? Like, when is it not okay? Like, there's people who will draw the line at people who, through the red cap, but they're not going to draw the line at people who actively misgender others. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yep.
or talk or say that trans, don't believe in oh, they say it's a lifestyle when you're talking about trans people. Like, that shit is boggles the mind. It's like, how can you allow one but not the other?
Yeah. But people, like I say, as I've seen personally, people have opinions that it's just, well, you can't reconcile them with each other, though, because this one fear is what they're worried about. So that fear is what affects them. Like I said before, when it affects them personally, like they had this fear, people have a fear for whatever of, homosexuality. The unknown is what it usually is. The unknown is what it usually is. And what they haven't been educated about. And the way that we've been educated, that's the other problem. It's like we've been educated for most of our lives, man, woman, black, white, categories. So that's a whole nother topic that we'll get into at another focal point, right?
But also that's changing. And that's why I would love to see what it looks like in 50 years.
Yes.
Because, to me, my generation is the millennials are the first generation that was really starting to be like, hey, we're gonna pump the brakes on this bullshit. And
every generation does it. They get older. But
I'm talking about because we have the tools to make global conversation immediately. Yes. Millennials created the social medias, okay? Yes. So that's what I'm saying. We have the tools to make that the global conversation. And again, it's not saying it didn't happen in the past. This is saying this is on a different scale. And then right behind you got Gen Z, who I absolutely love Gen Z, because Gen Z's taking it another step. They taking it further. And that's why I'm like, once that generation really comes out, are we going to be able to drown out the bullshit? Are we going to be able to drown out the noise?
Hopefully,
when I say come out, I mean come. Get to the point. Get to adulthood and is making policies when they're the ones who are in government. When they, what I'm saying, like 30, 40 years from now, when they're the ones in government, are we going to see some real change?
We shall see. But like my mother always said, especially about America, it's a pendulum. It swings one way and then it swings back the reverse way. Sometimes further and then sometimes it'll swing back, but it's always swinging back and forth. Because that's what this country is designed to do. But the world in general, like you said, we shall see. Now, I see you highlighted something that I definitely want to talk about because we were talking about a lot of pop culture, but how this relates to geek culture. And something that's near and dear to my heart is the author Warren Ellis, right? Warren Ellis is one of my favorite comic book authors. I've talked about him numerous times on this show. He wrote the comic book Planetary, which is probably top 10, top 5 for me. I don't, it's like, it's one of the greatest comic books I've ever read. I used to reread it about once a year. Now, recently, I came to be known that Warren Ellis has used his fame and power to seduce younger women, and enter into relationships with them that probably aren't the best. Now, we're not talking like little kids or none of that, nothing that disturbing. Grown women.
It's still disturbing, nonetheless.
It's still disturbing, but there's degrees of disturbing, as we said before,
Yeah.
And like I said, with Warren Ellis, it's one of those like these are grown women, approaching Warren Ellis, knowing who he is, and entering into what he says were, what's the word for it? Relationships that are,
open relationships?
Not open.
And when you say, are they grown women? Because first you said they were young women. I mean, you could be young and grown, but I'm just
18,
saying.
above 18, 19, 20,
you're
college
definitely
students.
A child still. I know
yes,
by law, you're legal, but you're a child.
Yes, indeed.
You're a
so, and Warren Ellis has apologized, and people, he's been where it's raked through the coals. People are not carrying his books. I know certain stores, I know Anyone Comics is not pushing his ish no more, any of that, So it's one of those things. But then also, here's the other side of it, right? Warren Ellis is also author to run on Moon Knight, where he created that persona, Mr. Knight, that we've seen in the posters and trailers and will be shown. And he did a really dope run on Moon Knight, for that matter. And like I say, a lot of his stuff is really dope. He's an incredible writer. Planetary is one of my favorite books ever. So at one point, do we be like after I found out, I stopped talking about Planetary on the show. This is the first time I've mentioned it since then. Right. The same goes for Joe Bennett, from the author. I mean, not the author, the artist of the recent Immortal Hulk run, which I talked about to infinity on here. Joe Bennett recently came out as anti-Semitic, extreme right wing. He's Brazilian, so he's down with the Brazilian Trump. He's just out of there. Even Marvel's like, all right, we done with him. Al Ewing was like, yo, I'll never work with him again. And they just did one of the most incredible runs of Hulk ever done, and immediately he's like, yo, I'm done with that. And since then I haven't mentioned Immortal Hulk, and I loved it.
That's fucked up. And then also, it's just when it comes to in the beginning, when we first posed this question, and when we first just threw this question in here, I said, can art be separated from artists? You said no, right? Is there a case where the artist is remorseful or repenting, or even realizing what they said was fucked up, was wrong, and they're doing active social justice to right their wrongs and the harm that they've caused? Is that grounds for exception, or and again, it's just this moving goalposts, and it depends. I guess the answer is it depends, right? Because if it's someone who comes out like a Nazi, I'm never giving you the time of day. I don't care how remorseful and all that shit was. That to me is unforgivable. There is no coming back from that, and people would have different levels of what they think there's no coming back from.
Yeah, it is. I mean, here's another one that's even closer to art, is the author Junot Diaz, right? We were just speaking about him before the show. We've had him on the show. We've had him on our YouTube. That's a good friend of, both of ours that I was a fan of his, and then I became a good friend of his. And then come to find out, Juno's had a questionable past with women. And Juno admitted to it such and was like, y'all done some dirt. I was wrong. And then basically went into hiding.
Yeah.
And accepted that, stopped doing tours, stopped doing anything, took the L, on all his money, just took the L. But, at what point does Juno get to, does he get another chance? That's a friend of mine, and I still talk to him when I talk to him stuff, and I'm like, damn, when does he get another chance?
I don't
does
know.
he?
Or in the court of public opinion, do they, depending on what was done, do they deserve another chance? And that's and we're broaching a lot of these questions that we have no answers for, because to me, the overarching response tends to be it depends.
Yeah, it really does just depend. It depends on the severity of what they've done, and also the severity of who they've done it to. Because as we know, black women, you can do, pretty much whatever, and people are going to ignore it. Black men pretty much messed up, and then, but if you do something to a white man or white woman, especially if you're not a white man or a white woman, you're going to have a lot of problems,
So this leads to maybe the last question in this focal point stuff. Could you stop yourself from consuming the art of that artist if you found out they did some foul shit?
I mean,
like I said, that Red Hat just fucked me up so much. I literally was not listening to that shit. I was listening to that shit for years.
I know, but recently I've been banging that album.
And then the new shit come out, and I was listening to it. Now I wasn't attending the concerts and all that shit, but it doesn't matter. I had said that. I have to understand that I'm, like I said, it's more than likely could be categorized as hypocritical. I feel this way, but then I'm also streaming his shit.
I mean, I'm
bumping that shit.
I definitely have bumped my Dark Twisted, recently, and continue to do it constantly.
Right, but that was also pre-Red Hat. So does that count? And that's why this conversation is why we're having this conversation, because it's so amorphous. because to me, there's no one real answer, and also there's no one way to look at it. Again, it depends on the person, it depends on the personality, it depends on your own moral code or your moral failings. It's so many variables, and I don't know if there's even I don't know if there's even just, besides someone coming in the street and saying, I hate every motherfucker out here, like, is there one thing someone could say that everyone hates them universally, and you know what I mean? And if they're just out the paint and on the planet.
All of y'all motherfuckers.
Like I'm just trying to think, is there something someone could say or do where it's just like, because to me, I like the things I feel like is, why would you fuck with that person? People are just like, well, and they're having it hard, and I don't get it.
Be like, I hate you too. You over there him and all.
You understand though? But you said so. So the question was, could you stop yourself from consuming that art? You said no.
No, it depends.
Like you said you stopped fucking with Planetary, for example. Did that mean you stopped reading it?
No. Wait, hold on.
You stopped talking about it.
I stopped talking about it.
So he said publicly, I ain't say nothing to y'all. But I was, you know that, what's that
Russell Westbrook?
The Russell Westbrook video where he's sneaking, eating whatever he eating while he courtside. That's what that feels like. It's like, oh, I know this wrong, but this shit tastes good. Like,
I haven't reread Planetary in a minute, but I will, like, oh, it's so good.
I know I got diabetes and I shouldn't be eating all this candy, but my nigga, this Laffy Taffy though, like.
But I do want to touch on something else before we get out of this and go back to Chappelle, right? Because I love Dave, right? But I get people's problem with him. But the other thing is I don't get is that people don't understand is this man's a comedian, right? This man ain't, a senator. He ain't, this or that. He's not the person. One, he's not the revolutionary. He's none of that. He's the person who's supposed to point out this stuff, make you laugh potentially while pointing it out. Because most comedians don't even point out. I mean, they do point out things, however they want to point out. But he touches on some very sensitive subjects, yes, but he makes points. And he's even grappling with the same thing. Like, he has that famous thing about Cosby in one of his recent specials, right? Where he is saying the same things that documentary that recently came out, We Gotta Talk About Cosby, is saying. Like, Cosby did a lot of good in his life. Like, a hell of a lot of good. And then he did some horrific other-ish. But, like, it's not to balance each other out, but it's like, it's like, wait, but, and it's like, I grew up on the Cosby Show, but I'm not, it's like.
Yeah, I think
it's one of those things. It's like, how do you balance out any, like, I'm not sitting there like, yo, I'm not saying, Cosby should be out of jail. I'm mad he's out of jail.
Right. It's like, how do you negotiate that? Because there's aspects of it that you agree with and aspects of it that you may not. Yeah. And also, and when I say it, I just mean any type of artist or any type of response that they get received. You may love their art and everything they've done, and they're just this terrible person.
Pusha T sold coke. Jeezy sold coke. Like,
I don't blame them. That's a whole different thing.
But at the same time, they sold coke. Like,
you sold crack to the community.
Yes, like, but Black Dynamite, I sell drugs to the community.
I sell drugs to the community. Like, you gotta laugh to stop from crying because this shit is so hard to deal with.
And that's the other thing. Like, we have on this list that we didn't mention, right? There's most of Hollywood directors, right, who signed on for Roman Polanski. People know the history of Roman Polanski. He's a Hollywood director who did some. I'm not even gonna say it on the show what he did. You can Google it yourself. It's it's out of here, right? Out of here.
And even somewhat recently, these are actors that are signed up to do his work, right?
No, beyond that. And I want to say, because, there's that meme going around where they're like, never asked a man his salary, never asked a woman her age, never asked most of Hollywood directors what they did in 2007 or 2012. Because one of those two is they signed a petition to allow him to come back to U.S. and to stop, the charges that would be on him. He's in Europe somewhere. Because if he ever comes back here, they're going to, try and convict him of the crimes he did. And most of Hollywood big-time directors, only a few I know, like Spielberg and somebody else who were actually righteous, did not sign this shit. The most people sign this shit. Mm-hmm. And it's like, God, so it's like, yeah.
And it's because they just love the art that much that he's too good of an artist.
I've never seen his movies like that, but people act like it. And I don't ever that's one thing I don't give a damn about, because I feel like, especially with directing the films in Hollywood, it is such an exclusively white male club that I don't care how talented you are, because there's someone who got denied a chance who is probably just as talented or more talented than you are. So I really don't care how talented you are in that field, because if you're trash, you're trash. And that dude's trash. So, you know, like I don't give a damn how talented. I don't care what movie you made. You know what I mean? I don't care if it's my favorite movie of all time. You know, I've questioned George Lucas. You know, Empire Strikes Back is, I'm about to say I'll question you, but I've questioned George Lucas, and he's my favorite director. You know, Empire Strikes Back is my favorite movie of all time. And I've been like, yo, George, come on, fam. Like, if I ever met George, I'd be like, bruh, we got to talk,
but
fam.
Are you asking we got to talk because he signed the petition, or
no,
you just talking
I'm
about
asking
you don't like
we got
what
to
he
talk
did?
about Jar Jar. We got to talk about a lot of things.
Okay, see, but that's like something totally else. And like I said, I think when we were
I don't
talking
even
about
care if he signed the petition. I got other things to worry about first.
That shit is
that comes
hilarious.
Later.
That shit's hilarious and comical, right? But there's also some dark undertones to shit like that, right? Because now you're talking about embedded racism, whether they knew it or not, or whether you did know it and thought that it was acceptable. It's just like, hey, man, that's a caricature, right? And I think that's also what drives a lot of the conversations and the confrontations between people about when they say, why are you still supporting this person? Because as you say, it's just certain things will affect different people differently, and depending on what the artist is doing, like depending on their level, right? Like it's yes, the main point about, like, besides the things he has said, like for using Dave Chappelle as an example, he still has a platform, right? And he's an icon. Like, he is this entity that the things he said, whether he's, like you said, he's maybe pointing out, he may have some good points or whatever. The point is, he's still doing these things that are hurtful to a whole group of people. And then he's just repeating it or doubling down or whatever. And not showing any type of understanding or remorse. And that's why that, large groups of people are just like, yo, like, I can't fuck with you. And that's what I'm saying. Like, that's the main point of contention. A lot of times it's just like, you don't realize that even you say, well, I'm not a politician, I'm not making the laws. It is your art that's also affecting the people who are making the laws, who are having who are making the social constructs that keep these other people down or keep me down. You know what I'm saying? So like, art affects the world in all forms. And that's why certain things are seen as and I get it, like, why it's so dangerous to allow that person to rock, because that same joke could be used by someone who wants to be in the street and shoot you.
And by the flip side of the coin, though, anything you say can be used. That's the other side, and it's like, yes, they, like, me personally, I enjoyed all four of those specials for what they were, because I think, his art form, his use of comedy is just, top level. But by the last one, I was like, oh, come on, fam. Like, all right, nigga. Like,
you said earlier today, you said you felt like he was just being pointless.
Like, as funny as some of the last one was, a lot of it was like, oh, nigga, all right, bro. Like, talk about something else, dog. Like, and like, that's what I heard about Donda too. Like, it's like a lot of Kim Kardashian stuff, and I'm like, Kanye, right now, I really don't give a shit. Like, there's so much else going on in the world. I don't care. And that's the same way I feel with Dave. At this point, it's like, but at the same time, I'm perhaps overly protective of both Dave and Kanye, because there are so few of the ones we have. And like I say, there is so much other toxic whiteness that's always going on and never being checked, that it's like, damn, I got to protect these few I got, It's tight, man. It's tough out here. And this discussion, I think we could talk about forever.
Yeah. But I think we got the gist out.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for helping me on this, for discussing this, because I think this is really good. I know the comments are loving it. I know Twitch.tv is loving it. Yeah.
And to be clear, like it's just something that I like I said, I personally struggle with and still trying to figure out. And I don't know the answer. I don't think none of us really truly know the answer. We know what's right and wrong, but from our personal perspectives, for many different reasons. So I would love to hear what everyone else has to say. Leave comments. When you see this up on the IG, leave your comments. Tell us what you think. If you're on the Patreon, email us, hit us up. Like, what do you think? What do you think about, like, whether you have ideas about cancel culture, whether you think it is possible to separate art from the artist? Can you just eliminate them completely? so a lot of his art is informed by the viewpoints of the artist. So it's just like, it's kind of just intrinsically within the DNA of that art. So how can you? But it's a lot of things to think about. So hit us up. Contact@forallnerds.com.